Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for sticking around. We're kind of breaking down the response to the Trump tape, and I just briefly before we going to talk about I guess internalized misogyny, and you'll explain more what that is. My reaction to this when it came out was, well, yeah, of course he did. Right? I wasn't surprised by that. The thing that surprised me was how it dominated my entire social media life for an entire weekend. I could not believe it. My Facebook wall was filled with this stuff, and you're having Republican leaders endorse him. You're having Paul Ryan saying, "Hey, look, we're not doing campaign events now." That's what really surprised me, because I'm sitting here like, this guy has been there for 18 months. He's been saying crazier stuff than this, right?
And more offensive stuff at times, or
at least as bad. What was it about this? And a good explanation I heard, I think it was on Fareed Zakaria's show, was, or it might have been on the, as I think it was probably on the media, was it is one thing. And because we compartmentalize just naturally, you talk about this a lot. It is one thing for folks to see him say wacky stuff behind a podium when he's performing, when he's saying, inciting violence, but in a way that is supposed to be performative in nature. It's a completely different thing to hear what he says when he doesn't think anybody else is listening in a group of people that he feels comfortable with. That's what I think has shocked everybody. That this is a guy who just has no regard in private.
Well, yeah. Now that sounds very plausible. I mean, I grew up watching Donald Trump, and he's
been this guy forever,
his whole life. Now, and to sit there and say, well, geez, Donald Trump was sitting with a reporter and didn't understand that the mic was on, I think, goes to the little bit to the extreme that Donald Trump would have to be a complete effing idiot to believe that mic wasn't on. It could be he was performing privately. All right. I don't know.
Oh, he's definitely performing privately, because he was bragging about going after these beautiful women.
Yeah, and
to a guy who was laughing and egging him on.
Yeah. And so that lies part of the problem is his own ego, which we already knew.
Yes.
I'm not really surprised by this. Here's why I'm not surprised. NBC sat on this video, or this audio, I guess, for what, a decade or more? They knew they had it. They knew they had it when he first started running. They knew he had it when he got nominated to be the Republican presidential candidate, and they waited till it would have the maximum impact. Because if they wait too long to release it, it looks really suspicious. And if they release it too early, he's going to be able to minimize the impact. That's my take on this. Now, do I support what he said? No. And I've been in a locker room a few different times, and the conversations in there really are bad. But it isn't to this kind. It's not like this, right? And so, I want to say that. Let's move on to internalized misogyny.
Mm-hmm.
And what this is basically an enculturation. You've talked about this just a minute ago. Yep. It's an enculturation of your sexual identity, right? And the problem is, if your sexual identity is to be subservient, then that is where you go. That is what people will define as beauty. One of the interesting things, because I read a lot of studies about cultures and about other areas and all that stuff, because I'm a shrink and that's important stuff to know. And one of the funny things, over here we have the idea that a burqa is a big giant bag that women are forced to wear. Now, don't get me wrong, they are required to cover themselves up in certain areas of the Middle East as much as possible. But what they never point out is underneath those outfits are some of the most beautiful clothes you have ever seen. Now, I get a lot of this information from National Geographic, because that's about the best magazine you could ever buy. And I will tell you that these women, they're so enculturated that if they're caught without their hijab on, when any man is within a certain range, they immediately put it on because they don't want to feel ugly. That is internalized misogyny. I'm using the Muslims here now, but it's true here in the United States, particularly remember June Cleaver and all that stuff? That's the same kind of thing. And the problem is when you have a clash, when your culture is getting mixed up like it is now, and not mixed up as in bad, but as in, you take a blender and mix it up, what you have is there's a group of women who are enculturated one way, because just think about where your hometown.
Yep.
And compare it to Des Moines. And think about that culture shock. So you have people in different areas with different cultures, and we're a mixing society.
Well, it's not so much. I don't see it that way so much. I think because it's how to explain this. So we certainly have as Americans, we certainly can point to the way that women dress around the world. If it's different than here as maybe misogynistic or whatever else, especially if anybody's forced to wear something against her will. But here in this country, it takes on a different character, but it's still the same kind of thing. So I would agree. You've seen women. And I mean, it's easy to bag on religions, but that's not the point of what I'm trying to say. You see women around this country, especially in the last several years, wearing more of a movement to free the nipple or to wear less clothes and to say, I feel sexy when I do this. I don't care I'm not wearing this for you. That's a very, very common, very old misogynistic principle that I think is misogyny. The male gaze, you've heard about this a lot, that women do things because men want them or because men are looking a certain way. It's in almost all of advertising. It's movies. It's
everywhere.
Right. And there's been this movement over the last several years for women to say, I'm going to wear no clothes if I feel like it because that's what I want to do, or I'm going to wear things that I feel sexy in. We see slut walks all over the country protesting sexual violence, doing those sorts of things. And the reaction to that, there's an actress, I can't remember her name now, but there's an actress who's sort of taking on a lot of this mantle herself, young, very attractive, who doesn't wear much clothing. Sometimes she wears other stuff. Doesn't interpret where she feels in the moment, and she gets pilloried all the time by folks like, well, you call yourself this feminist, but you're half naked. You're selling your body in these kinds of ways. And her response is, this isn't for you. I'm dressing this way or I'm acting this way because I want to. It has nothing to do whether I hope you think that I'm sexy. It has nothing to do with I want you to see me a certain way. I'm dressing this because I see myself this certain way. And so that's misogyny right there. The idea that you can't say something because you look a certain way that I find objectionable. And if you're a woman, Miss Andrew is the same kind of thing for men. But you kind of follow the point that I'm making, that we see just in the way that women are forced to cover in certain cultures around the world, women who they're kind of forced to cover here too. For similar kinds of reasons. We can't have. You saw this in that news report from the elementary school where the principal was saying, "Hey, girls, if you're going to wear a skirt, it has to be so this kind of length,
codes and all that.
This kind of length because it distracts the boys." That is a form of misogyny.
Yes, well, and I would agree. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to be back right after these messages. Thanks for tuning in. We cannot do what we do without you. We're going to continue our discussion about misogyny and how women actually use misogyny to be able to further their own financial goals. This is going to be interesting.
I think we'll be back right after talked about that.
Yes, we're going to be back right after this break.